Hey guys, Chris from the Ultimate Recycler. Welcome back to the channel. I've just purchased one of these little Geiger counters, or it's actually called a nuclear radiation detector. It's made by, I don't even know how to say it, FNIRSI. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that because it'll sound ridiculous. It's a model GC-01, and I can pronounce that. I've purchased it for my own safety, and I thought I'd do a review video on it. Now, it's a review in that it's a total layman's, non-technical, is it any good, should you buy it type of review. And I'll go through, I have opened the box, so I'll open it again for you, show you what you get. I've got a reason for buying it, and that's my health and safety. Now, I won't drone on too long as far as the introduction goes, but a few years ago I did a video on repairing a 1950s alarm clock with luminous indices and hands. And I constantly, the video still goes quite well on YouTube, and I constantly get comments about radium and how dangerous it is. And I thought I'd investigate on the actual real danger of it and what you should look out for. And if you collect old clocks or watches particularly, or even uranium glass, just how dangerous is radioactivity in our households. So I bought this. It's only a cheapie. You can spend, in fact, in my research on these things, most people said if you want to get serious, you really have to spend upwards of, well, $500 or $1,000 or more to get something that is really accurate. But turns out this one is probably all we need. I paid about $80 for this. It's Australian, through eBay. I think you can get it through Amazon even cheaper. If I can find a link, I'll put it underneath. And I'll run through quickly what it does, where the real dangers are, and how I'm going to make some decisions on what to open up and have a go at repairing and what not to touch. I should point out at this stage, this is not a sponsored video. I went out and bought this thing with my own hard-earned money. And being the ultimate recycler, I like to try and fix everything. So with a clock like this, is it safe to pull apart? Can we spend a bit of time getting it going? Or is it simply too dangerous? Well, that's the reason I bought this Geiger counter. Now, when you open it up, as I said, I have opened it, I've had a play with it. I needed to learn a little bit about it before I talk to you. It's quite a neat little unit. It comes in an instruction book, which is mostly in Chinese, but there is a section in English. Doesn't give you a lot of information, but just the basics. Now, this will detect gamma rays and beta rays, I believe, but not alpha. And alpha generally is relatively safe when it's in the form of radium on a clock, or even if it's coming from uranium glass itself, because alpha particles are very easily blocked. In fact, even the plastic dial here, the dial glass, will block alpha particles, and even your skin. They won't penetrate your skin or clothing. So in its form, how it is in our house, we're safe from alpha particles. Beta and gamma rays are a little bit different. They will travel through things. This thing will detect beta and gamma, I believe, according to what I've read. So there is background radiation everywhere. So if I turn it on, which is a quick press, it wakes up. I'm not worrying about any numbers on or details on what radiation is around. I just simply wanted a basic unit where I can compare, is something radioactive? Is it emitting dangerous beta or gamma particles, or is it not much worse than just background radiation? So I'll leave this run for a little bit, but the background radiation, I think in Australia, but generally worldwide, unless you're in a hot spot for some reason, the background radiation is 0.05 up to about 0.2, and that's measured in microsieverts, I think that's how you pronounce it, per hour. So that's what this is measuring. There's a little micro symbol. SV is short for sievers, and correct me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, per hour. We have 0.06, which is, or it's going up a little bit now, but we've got perfectly normal, non-dangerous background radiation. Now, I'm assuming that's beta, both beta and gamma. I'm not totally sure, and that's where a more expensive unit will tell you that sort of information. I don't really need to know that. I just need to know if something's safe. And that's where my review comes in on this item. It seems to do the job nicely for a pretty budget price. So we'll leave it run for a while. I like the graph. The only disappointment with this thing when I got out of the packet, and I didn't realise, is that it doesn't give you those classic Geiger counter clicks. You get a little flashing light here, which I think you'll see. Every time that flashes, that's one click. So it would be nice to have the click, and I believe you can modify this. There apparently is a little hack you can do involving soldering a capacitor across from the LED light to the speaker or something like that. And I believe there's also a different firmware version you can put on that makes it click. So I will be looking into that, but it's really only just because it's cool. I don't need it. This graph seems to work exactly what I want to see. So there we go, constant background radiation levels there of about 0.08 as it's reading at the moment. And you can see from the graph it's fairly constant. I took it outside before, much the same. And what I really wanted to know was in my little room, in this part of the workshop where I do a lot of little electronics work and a bit of tinkering, and I also sit at my computer and do all my editing and everything, right next to where I sit in this drawer are a great stack of old watches. We have pocket watches, we have 70s digital ones, there's some that I need to research, a lot of 60s ones. And I do plan one day to learn how to pull a watch apart and completely rebuild it. That's, hope I live long enough to be able to do that. So there's a lot of old watches in here, and I needed to know which ones, if any, are dangerous, and was I getting dangerous radiation levels sitting next to it all the time. So I've brought the Geiger counter in here, and it has, whoops, it's just gone dull for a moment. It has picked up a little bit, but then it drops down again, so just probably normal fluctuations, and we're not far from the drawer, so that makes me feel better that I haven't been constantly bombarded with nasty radiation. But let's pop this in the drawer. We'll close the drawer, and we'll open it up in, say, about 3 or 4 minutes to give the graph time to respond. Okay, that should be long enough. Let's get it out, and what's the graph done? Well, it's gone up. We're at 0.24 microsieverts. I've forgotten how to say it. So there's definitely higher radiation in that drawer than outside it, and 0.2 was actually just outside normal background limits. So it's certainly higher than the background limits here that I was measuring before, and now that it's back out, it's dropping down again. So that drawer definitely has radiation, but it doesn't appear to be a health risk to me sitting in here. However, what I want to know is which ones are radioactive. Therefore, they're the ones that I really want to move on. I don't want to play with, and I'll discuss that reason shortly. But let's take this whole drawer out to the other bench where we've got a bit of room and just check a few of them and see which ones probably contain radium. Okay, let's pull a few of these out, and we'll just, I'll have to take these out of the bag, and we'll just check a few, and I'll plan to go through the drawer completely and isolate anything that actually shows radioactivity. This one hasn't even got a glass on it, so that's where the real risk comes in. What I think we'll do is I'll use one of these little boxes, and then we can sit our Geiger counter on top, because I think it reads it from the back. Now, radium has been used in clocks and watches right up to the 60s, I believe. Most of you would have heard the story of the radium girls, that basically a lot of them died from cancer and all sorts of nasty issues from dipping or licking their paintbrushes to get, basically point the paintbrush to get nice fine detail on the watches. They painted the radium dials, and the radium was used to give a fluorescence so you could see the dial at night. It was also used in Air Force aircraft. A lot of World War II gauges and things show radioactivity. So that one looks good. So I'm pleased about that, because with no dial on it, that's where a major risk happens. Now, I said before about alpha particles that they are generally safe because they can't get through things. But the real problem was, and I guess it was the same with the radium girls, was that when they licked their brush, they ingested the radium, and it's actually an isotope. I think it's radium-226 isotope. And when you ingest it into your body, then you have, whoa, look at the graph. When you ingest radium into your body, whether you breathe in fine dust or by licking the paintbrush, the radium or the radioactivity and alpha particles in particular aren't blocked by anything. They're inside your body already. And I read that the body treats radium much the same as calcium and stores it in your bones, which is why the radium girls had, I think, a lot of bone cancers. And it's cumulative, so your body actually doesn't get rid of it. There's basically alpha particles emitted from radium in your bones, and it just keeps bombarding you from inside, and that's the real danger. Look at that graph go. I'm going to get rid of that pocket watch. It still has the glass on it, so I should be protected from the alpha particles, but there's beta and gamma radiation. I don't want to take that apart because of the risk of breathing in the dust or ingesting some of the radium, and it basically would be within me forever because radium has a half-life of 1,600 years. And you've got to also remember that just because they may be no longer luminous, the radium is still pretty much full radioactivity for, well, at least over 1,000 years. So there we go. Our levels are dropped down straight away. We'll see what this watch reads. I'm going to sort these as I go. So the issue then really is ingesting the dust or somehow getting the radium into your body, and that's the major risk. The radioactivity from this particular watch, as far as my health goes, wasn't a lot above normal safe levels or normal background levels. It probably still comes under normal safe levels. I didn't actually see what the figure was. If I look at the graph, it might have got up to 1 or 2 microsieverts per hour. So not super dangerous, but certainly well above background levels. But the danger with clocks, as I said, is the dust if you open them up, and that's what I'm really aware of. This one's fine. Look at the graph, drop straight down. So this is why I actually like this Geiger counter. The graph gives a really good representation. It just would have the cool factor if we had the clicks. So that one's fine. I'd be confident in pulling it apart and cleaning it up. Not sure when that dates to. Might be around the 60s. Now, what about a little men's watch? This is a Titan, 17 jewels, Swiss watch. Don't know. So the luminous paint they put on the dials contained the radium isotope, and the idea of that, I believe, was that the radium caused a luminous compound, like I think they use zinc sulfide or sulfate, and the radium excited that so that it glowed pretty well permanently. I have seen some videos where guys will shine a black light on a clock or a watch, and it makes it luminous and then it fades out. That really has no bearing on whether you have radium in there or not, because even if the clock doesn't fluoresce, it just means that the fluorescent material or the luminous material has decayed and the radium is still as powerful as the day it was painted on. This one's fine, no issues with that one. So that's my plan. I'm going to go through all these, pull out any that are obviously radioactive, and those ones I certainly will not be working on. And it'll be interesting to see out of this whole drawer whether we have a few or whether that was the only one. Okay, we have another hot one. This one's a watch, a men's watch, and it's reading about 0.8 or up to 1 now. Still going up. Wow. So about 1.4. So that's a long way above 0.2. Still going. Okay. Well, that's a hot one for sure. Now that one is a Unicorn men's watch, probably 1960s. I have a feeling Unicorn were connected with Rolex. I'm not sure there, but that's certainly a hot one that I don't want to pull apart. So that can go over there. We'll keep going with our checking. Not too many to go. Okay, this one's really going off. Now, it's actually adjusted the screen height and it's dropped the background radiation level almost to a hardly discernible level. So this one was much more radioactive than the last one we found, and it's measuring there 3.3 microsieverts per hour. So that one is a hot one as well. What actually is it? It's a bit hard to make out, even with my glasses. I think it says relied, something like that, 15 joule. but that's clearly got some radium in there somewhere. Now also, with the UV light, let me shine a UV light on it. You're probably just getting purple reflection. There's really nothing glowing there. Okay, and interestingly with these other ones that tested hot, same deal. I can't get any fluorescence out of them. And the reason for that, no, I don't think there's any there. Let me show you one that tested perfectly fine. And can you see the fluorescence there? Probably a bit hard from this angle there. You can see the hands and the indices fluorescing. So on a very old watch like this one here, I think it's a lady's watch, probably 1920s or so, maybe early 30s. So certainly in the era when they were doing radium painting, this one fluoresces quite nicely as well. And the reason, and yet this tests safe. So the reason is, I believe, that the radium actually destroys the luminous compound that they mix with it. So when you see something that isn't luminous at all, it doesn't mean the radium's worn off or anything. It's still as powerful as it was back when it was painted. So probably if you find an old watch that still fluoresces well, you can probably take that as that there's no radium in there, and whatever fluorescing material they used is still okay. All right, I'll keep checking. But look at our graphs dropped back to normal levels. You see how low the normal level is now compared to that last watch? So that was the really hot one. Only got a few to go. Let's finish checking them. So I finished checking all these, and most of them, the vast majority, are fine. There even are some quite earlier ones here that are okay. I'm very pleased that the few I had in here with no glasses on the front or just parts, all those dials are okay, which is great because that would have been a real worry having radium not even protected from the cover, and the possibility of dust or flakes getting in the air would be very dangerous. I certainly hope that in my previous years of tinkering, I haven't pulled apart one that is radioactive and I wouldn't have known, and I guess sometimes these things can come back and haunt you, but at this stage I'm doing all I can to make sure I'm safe. My little pile over here of hot watches, if you look at the meter, she's gone nuts, absolutely nuts. What's our reading up to there? 5.45, and it's still climbing, I think. So that is our pile of hot watches that I need to get rid of. They're not super dangerous, as I said, just like they are, and they all have their glasses on them, which is excellent. But I'm going to put them in the shop with a big warning, so they'll only be available to be purchased by someone that knows what they're doing and is well aware of the radium issues, because I certainly don't want to throw them out. And I guess there's probably issues with throwing radioactive material into the bin as well. But they should be in collections, but they should be treated with respect. And if anyone's going to work on them and service them and do whatever else they, even if they want parts out of them, they need to be well aware of the radium paint on the dials. The watch itself is fine. It's really only the dial. So, but they're the ones that I'm getting rid of. I certainly don't want to ever have to open those ones up. And this little unit, it's now dropping back to normal background levels, is doing exactly what I wanted it to do. So I'm pretty happy with it. The only thing I'd like to try and do, as I said, is get those clicks just for the coolness factor. As for these others, well, I'll put them back in the drawer, and one day I might get game and start pulling watches apart and learning how they work and learning how to fix them. There are some, like this one I've picked up now, that it's probably more of an early 70s watch. There are some that read a little higher on the Geiger counter than normal background, but I did some checking, and apparently they used tritium, which is an isotope of hydrogen, with the fluorescent or the luminous compounds into the 70s, and then much more recently they've used strontium aluminate, which is not radioactive at all. Now the tritium is, but very slightly. It doesn't emit anywhere near what the radium does, and it has a half-life of much less time than 1,600 years. So anyway, these are all safe enough for me to tinker with one day when I run out of other projects. I'm not sure that will ever happen though. Before we go, a couple more tests. I checked the Baby Ben Westclock's alarm clock, and that was perfectly fine. And I've just been testing, and you can see we've got normal background levels there. Probably a 60s era travel clock. I'm not sure what brand this is, but that's fine, even though the dial is quite luminous with the black light. And interestingly, as I may have mentioned before, every single one of those hot watches, not one was luminous at all with the black light. So I think that goes to show that the radium does actually break down the luminous compounds, and they just don't work anymore as a luminous watch. But of course, they're still quite dangerous. Another watch I just got out of a bag that came from a local lady, Lynn, and that's where that travel clock also came from. This is a genuine Omega Seamaster. It's a bit rough. The dial's a bit yellowed, and I think it had a fault. Does it not wind? I thought it had some sort of fault, or maybe, oh yeah, that's it. The crown and or the winder, whatever you call it, doesn't click in properly. Something's worn or broken there. It's actually running now, so it does actually work. But I just did a quick check on that before, and I've reset the meter or the Geiger counter, and I'll put it back over the top. And as you can see, the red light's flashing at the top more vigorously, and the graph's starting to go up. So it also has radium paint on the dials, and I will probably not put this one in the shop. I'll probably eBay this one. They are a very expensive watch, and I know it's genuine, and I think it will probably go to a specialist collector who will know what he's on about as far as treating the dial with care. It is running, and other than the winder thing coming out, I think it's in pretty reasonable condition. Oh, and of course the face is a bit yellowed. But that will be appearing on my eBay series soon. It'll be very interesting to see what that makes. I've seen them bring really, really big money, but given that this one's, it's been used, it's worn, and it has some issues, I really don't know what it's worth. So that's where eBay comes into its own. But it certainly shows up on the Geiger counter, and as you can see, it's dropping back now. So radioactivity on these things doesn't really reach very far. I've got to actually put the Geiger counter right over something for it to register. So that's another reason why just being nearby these things isn't really a health risk, because they're not that much higher. In fact, they're probably not even as high as some natural background levels in certain parts of the world. As I said earlier, and I'll keep repeating, the main danger is if you pull these apart. Ingesting or inhaling the radium is essentially deadly. I can't put it any simpler than that. Before we go though, one more quick test. Let's have a go at this uranium glass. What is it, a vase? It's probably late Victorian. It's got hand-painted or enamelled petals or flowers on it. And it's got an open pontil scar at the bottom. So I'd suggest that's late Victorian. And it's a nice green, and it does actually glow fairly vividly with our UV light. In fact, in a dark room, it's actually like a beacon. So it's certainly uranium glass. Let's see how that goes on our Geiger counter. We'll leave that just track for a while and see how it pans out shortly. So that looks like it's stabilized now. And if your question was, is uranium glass radioactive? Well, the answer is definitely yes. However, the levels, what's that reading? 0.26, only just above normal background levels. And as I said before, it's probably lower than some background levels in certain parts of the world. So yes, it is radioactive, but at levels so low that it doesn't pose a risk. And because you can't breathe in any of the radioactivity, and I don't know how uranium is treated in the body as compared to radium, but there's no dust, it's bound up in the glass, and there's no danger of ingesting it. So it's perfectly fine as far as normal radiation levels go, and that's with the meter sitting right on top of it. So there we go. That pretty well ends my testing. I've got my hot watches to get rid of. I've got the Omega to put on eBay with suitable warnings, and I can put the other ones back in my room. So thanks for watching, guys. If you would just come here for a review on this thing, sorry, you've also learnt about watches, and you've also learnt about uranium glass, and you've also learned how far behind I am in my projects. Anyway, do I think this is worthwhile? Yes. For peace of mind, to make sure that you're not keeping something that you're going to tinker with one day that is actually radioactive. This is great. There's no bells and whistles and unfortunately no clicks, but I'm going to look into that. but it does the job nicely for under 100 Australian, probably under 50 US. I'll do an Amazon link underneath. They might even be cheaper now. But nice little gadget. It charges, comes with a USB cable for charging, and I would recommend it for your own health and safety and just as a guide, because that's all I wanted. I didn't want any technical information. I didn't want to have to understand radioactivity any more than what I've just learned in the last day doing a bit of reading. But it gives me a comparison of normal safe background levels and what might be particularly more harmful and I should not pull apart. And I think that's the key. We're not looking for stuff that's going to be a major health risk just by walking near. I just want to know what I can pull apart safely and tinker with and what I should leave alone. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll put the details underneath for this. Catch you in the next video. Bye for now.